In times when those in power think they are better than everyone else, terrible things happen, because no one stands in the way of those who think they can do anything. Have you ever heard stories where heroes, in the name of their own goals and higher causes, driven by ambition and dreams, change the life of others into nightmare? Sometimes pursuing such goals leads people down a dead end. There are also those who delude themselves until the very end that something good will come out of it, unaware that they are digging their own grave. I have one such story for you. During routine space scans, a military transport galleon was detected near Saturn. While it looked normal from the outside, it also appeared abandoned. Communication attempts failed. No one knew how that happened, but a container of a bioweapon cracked. Infestation. A seemingly minor problem triggered a cascade of events, ultimately leading to death of the entire crew. The drifting spacecraft was filled with twisted monsters. The dispatched patrol managed to send information about the incident. Moments later, they became one with the Horde. 10 six-man teams were assigned to clear the galleon, the captain and 5 newly trained clones. Grenier. Although it would be a baptism of fire for most, no significant losses, if any, were anticipated. The infestation adapts quickly, but these were newly infected. Their combat effectiveness would be far from the maximum potential. Garaak-057 was the leader of one of the groups. For him, it was also a baptism of fire, but in the role of commander. However, he had no other expectations than the mission's success. The groups marched into the drop pods one by one. There was no point in trying to be subtle and just fly into the galleon through the dock. Slam of the hatch, shot of a pod launched into space, buzzing of hydraulics lifting another. Plague knew the usual way to enter the ship, and the holes in the hulls can be patched. The element of surprise was crucial here. Slam, shot, buzzing. Garaak made sure he had everything. The success of the mission and the lives of his clone brothers would depend on it. The survival of his men was a secondary objective, but still an objective. Slam, shot, buzzing. Now it was his group's turn. All 6 of them quickly entered the pod, took their places, fastened the seatbelts, and the hatch slammed shut. A loud explosion and a jolt. Lights flashed in the cabin. A few moments later, a loud impact, and the pod hatch fell open. In an instant, they untangled themselves from seatbelts and scattered around to take up tactical positions in the room they had just found themselves in. The interior seemed strangely quiet. The only sound was the thud of successive pods periodically slamming into the galleon's hull. Command had marked the points where scans showed the fewest life forms, so they could surprise infestation and begin their elimination more easily. Garaak made a gesture, and the group moved toward the passage to the next room. There they found the walls and tables lavishly decorated with bloody splatter. A distinctive metallic smell hung in the air. Various objects were strewn across the floor, some broken, others covered in blood and mucus. In the next room, the lamp dimly glowed with a macabre light. It was covered in someone's blood. Something pulsing grew from a vent. One of the clones crushed a tentacle with his boot with force, causing it to squeal and tussle, and then freeze after a second. At that moment, a sound that couldn't have come from human's mouth echoed from the depths of the nearest corridor. the team ran out of the room, setting a formation to hold their position. Two monsters were approaching rapidly. One still resembled a human, but uncontrolled twitching of its limbs made it difficult to run. The second creature, though, was nothing like its former self. It had 5 limbs, and its head as it ran wildly. It dangled as if it was on a spring. Yet it exactly knew where it was going and what it wanted to do. "Fire!" Garaak immediately gave the order, and the rhythmic rattle of rifle fire filled the corridor. The volleys of bullets effectively halted the infested. But before their corpses stopped moving, more creatures rushed from around the corner. The efficient clicks and metallic sounds of rifles reloading momentarily replaced the gunfire. Garaak quickly grabbed a grenade. With smooth movement, he unlocked the safety, pressed the detonation button, and threw it. The whole thing took less than a second. "Fall back!" Everyone ran into the room they had come from, along with the deafening explosion. The wet sounds of gore and tissue scattered throughout the corridor echoed. The Grineer finally went to see if anything needed finishing, but there was no need to. "Quick, move on!" Garaak ordered, and the group ran forward on high guard. A little further on, they heard the sounds of the fight in the distance. They ran into the main hall where all roads converged. Several teams gathered there, trying to work together to eliminate infestation and take over the room. Screams, roars, and screeches, interspersed with volleys from automatic rifles, filled the entire room. The teams dealt with the threat quite effectively, with almost no casualties on the Grineer side. The experience of the commanders and the discipline of their subordinates, everything was as it should be. Suddenly, a dark figure appeared out of thin air and immediately threw itself into the fray. As if the shadows on the walls, dissatisfied with the commotion on board, had given birth to a being that meant to enforce peace. But its purpose wasn't to help, but to kill. The infested, the Grineer, irrelevant. His absolute indifference to whose life he was taking indicated that only death mattered, and only he was destined to survive. The Angel of Death, the Lord of Doom. His moves were unimaginably fast, almost unnatural. He wore no armor like the Grineer, and the way he moved, almost like a machine, with no hesitation, nearly automatically. His blade whistled through the air, slashing gore against the walls, as if the creatures and soldiers, being deprived of life, offered no resistance with their bodies. As if he breathed death, not air, and that was the main thing that kept him alive. Garaak fired several volleys at the attacker, but neither missed, or the bullets that should have reached him were deflected by the blade. The acrobatics performed didn't prevent the attacker from throwing kunais simultaneously with a deadly precision. One blade, one body, and with each passing second, the number of targets dwindled. Garaak tried to report the incident to the command, but he couldn't. Communications were clearly jammed. They were on their own. After a moment, he realized he was the last one alive. The masked figure stood motionless in the distance, but Garaak knew he didn't have much time left. Although genetic engineering and training were supposed to make him resistant to fear, right now he was scared to the bones. "I won't survive this. For the Empire," he thought. Slowly, he tried to reach his grenade belt, but as he touched one, he heard a short whistling sound that hurt him. The attacker, with the swiftness of the wild animal, made a movement of his hand, and 3 kunai slammed into Garaak's hand, chest, and throat. Beneath the mask, his face froze with surprise. He hadn't thought anything could squeeze through such a small gap between his helmet and chest plate. And yet, precision worthy of the true beast. A moment later, Garaak fell, and as life drained from his body, he realized that he had unlocked and armored the grenade, but hadn't removed it from his belt. Before the light in his eyes completely faded, he heard an explosion for a split of a second, followed by darkness, nothingness. But it didn't last long, a brief moment, in fact. Then came a slight daze, blurry vision, a mist before his eyes. Slam, shot, buzzing. The weight of the rifle in his hands almost nervously clenched. Garaak didn't know why, but he felt fear, even though he had been taught not to. So everything was fine, right? Slam, shot, buzzing. His training wouldn't fail him. His brothers wouldn't fail him. On that galleon are only newly infected. There would be no problems. Slam, shot, buzzing. Now it was his group's turn. Enough! A loud order rang out in the room, with a voice as cold as glacier. The figure sitting in the chair rose and removed its weird helmet. The room was filled with a blue glow and dozens of cables. These connected various apparatuses to jars containing brains. Their owners, or rather, their bodies, were no longer useful to the Empire. Their brains, however, still had the potential. Vast shelves of Grineer brains, unaware that everything they proceed was a lie. A closed loop of repeating events with various murderers in the background, and the darkness devouring the memories of it all. On and on, endlessly.
What are your impressions now? Any comments? Should I change anything?
Asked an elderly scientist, whose appearance gave the impression he remembered the beginnings of the Orkin Empire.
Good enough,
Caris replied emotionlessly.
But what could I improve? There's definitely something that...
No, it is as it should be. The firm voice immediately brought the pensive scientist to attention.
The simulation is good, Imris. The council will reward you.
With that, the hooded figure jumped down from the chair and left the room. The scientist stood still for a moment, wondering if he should say anything more, even though he was left alone.
Well, this collaboration wasn't particularly passionate, but it still means a lot that the Empire convinced this psychopath to help with my project.
The old man slumped into his chair with an effort, continuing his monologue.
So, it is done. Finally, my life's work is finished. I just need to add in the final report that the simulation can use consciousness scans instead of living brains. I hope the council will be pleased, and I will be rewarded with eternal life.
Imris was indeed rewarded with the gift of eternal life, but not in the form he expected. His inquisitive nature was preserved, but any remains of the empathy were completely erased. And so, Cephalon Simaris, as he was named after being scanned and edited, continues to simulate battlefield events to this day, so that others could train, and he will do so forever. Be careful what you wish for, Tenno, because one day it might just come true. Happy Knights of Naberus.